This podcast is part of the Spoon Podcast Network, home of smart conversations that feed your mind.
Hi, I'm Amy Wu, and welcome again to Women Innovators in Food and Farming, where I spotlight some of the entrepreneurs and innovators behind the technology shaping the future of food and farming. I am the founder of From Farms to Incubators, a multimedia platform that tells the stories of women in food and farming. And we're so excited to have you all join us again and tune into our show. I am very excited to have with me today our guest, Hubba Khatoon, the Regional Innovation Director of the Canadian Food Innovation Network. First, a short intro about Hubba, and then we're just going to jump right into the discussion. Hubba is the Regional Innovation Director of the Canadian Food Innovation Network. She drives innovation and scales startups across Canada's prairies. With a decade at the intersection of tech and economic growth, she leads CFIN's 1,000-plus prairie members. She earned degrees from Oxford, including a master's in economics. She's very passionate about the next generation of foods, digital transformation, and sustainability. And she was named one of the Peak's 2024 Emerging Leaders. So I'm really excited today about our discussion, Hubba. Where are you joining us from today? Where are you joining us from today?
Amy, I'm based in Calgary, Alberta. It's one of the most beautiful cities in Canada, and it's very warm here today.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about the Canadian Food Innovation Network. We have listeners from all over the world, including the U.S. We'd love to learn more about that network.
Yeah, for sure. So Canadian Food Innovation Network came to life in 2021. We are a national not-for-profit. We're fully funded by the federal government through innovation, science, and economic development, and also through Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. And basically, the reason why we came to life is because we want to spur transformative and transferable innovation across the food ecosystem in Canada. So what we do support is in the post-farm gate, all the way up to consumer plate and everything in between. That would include cell foods, it would include upcycling, it would include functional foods and biotechnology, it would include next generation food and drinks, it would also include restaurant technology and all of that. We have a small but mighty team. We're all across Canada. So similar to myself, there are 4 other regional innovation directors across Canada. There's Lavina Gully in BC. There's Tyson McInnes in Atlantic Canada. There's Julie Degle in Quebec. And there's Marcia in Ontario. And then the rest of our team is all across Canada as well.
Oh, so diverse, and it's spread throughout, right? I mean, all the different regions and 1,000+ members. Can you share a little bit about the food tech kind of landscape or ecosystem in Canada?
Yeah, so 1,000+ members just in the prairies. So the prairies consist of 3 provinces, Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, which fall under my jurisdiction. But across Canada, we have a member base of over 7,000 people in the food space that are actively working in this space on a daily basis. And this 7,000 is growing on a rapid scale. So we provide funding to companies in the food space, and that's one of our core kind of purposes. We have this funding program called Innovation Booster, which gives funding out to companies up to $200,000 that want to activate on their food innovation. So let's say you're looking into a next level of innovation. We would provide you with funding and connectivity and support, and you can action on it. It's 50% of matching funding, but it is non-dilutive. So it's great for companies that are really looking to scale on their next innovation project. We also provide another funding called Food Tech Next, which is basically looking into food tech companies that have applications in food. So we help them connect to a pitch coach. We connect them to investors and government and anyone that they could really potentially collaborate with through a larger event that we do in Ottawa every year. And so through that funding, we generated some really, really good projects as well. So based on all the funding that we've provided, we've actually supported over 90 companies in Canada. They have generated over 90 IPs, and we've supported we've given out $20 million to those companies
Oh,
in
wow.
non-dilutive funding.
That's amazing. I mean, when I think about food tech, ag bio and so forth, I think it's quite diverse, right? I mean, you have, could be everything from sensors to robotics to, what we call next generation foods. Sort of like what is leading the space in Canada now? I mean, you mentioned this 90 plus companies. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So we get all sorts of companies, and if you ask me what's leading this space, we've actually just recently did a report on the food tech ecosystem within Canada. And I'll share some findings that are really useful from the report. But one of the elements that the report highlights is kind of the top three domains that Canada is doing really well in. The first one, of course, is plant-based proteins.
Mm.
So, plant-based proteins actually make up of 25% of Canada's food tech companies, so it's massive. It's also a much, much higher average than the global average of 14%. So really, really good concentration there. The second element that we've identified from the report and from the daily work that we do with companies is around that functional food and beverage market. So Canada's functional food and beverage market is expected to hit 19.2 billion US dollars by 2026. And that's massive. But what's great is it's the number two in terms of the biggest in terms of the number of companies that exist. Um, we do have some issues around regulatory approvals and
Mm.
development costs around functional foods, so that's an area that we're looking to build within Canada, but it's a really fast-growing market. And then the third is around food waste reduction and upcycling. So we know that this particular area offers major opportunity in Canada. We produce a lot of food waste in Canada, equal to Finland, Sweden, and Denmark
Mm.
combined. So we quantified it. It's 21 million tons of food waste annually, and that's a huge
Oh,
problem
wow.
that we see. So progress is being made, but we're really investing in a lot of companies that are looking into upcycling and really navigating how food can be transferred from one area to another in a most efficient manner so there's reduction in waste. Also a lot of packaging companies as well. So these three key areas are what we're really looking as key opportunities within the food ecosystem.
That's really exciting. I want to learn because I love to eat as well. Love to try new kinds of foods. And one term that I'm hearing now is next generation foods. So share a little bit about how do you define next generation foods, and can you give us some examples of that? I'm sure a lot of our listeners also like to eat and try different kinds of foods that are also nutritious.
Yeah, for sure. Next generation foods would basically be game-changing technologies or innovations that are reshaping our food systems. They could be anything, as I mentioned, as emerging plant-based innovations. They could be biotechnology. They could be circular economy models. Some really exciting companies that I can think of that we've actually supported that are developing next generation foods would be someone like it has to be beyond the basic burger, right? So it would
Hmm.
be someone like Live and Protein or a company like BioFact Innovations, another company called Maya Farms. They actually make this mushroom powder that's got 2.8 times as much protein as beef,
Mm.
and they won Canada's Space Agency Challenge last year as well. New School Foods, Profilet, some really, really cool companies that are um, they're really focusing on consumer choice, but they're also allowing for lower emissions, reducing land use, creating an entirely new value chain that's rooted in sustainability.
How interesting is that? I mean, with some of the companies that you mentioned your organization has supported. I mean, how do you like where do you find their foods? For example, is it out in the market, and how do you define success?
Yeah, for sure. So we fund projects between technology readiness level 3 to 7. So we would start from a concept and help build a prototype, and then we'll connect these companies to other partners that could really help escalate and, kind of
Mhm.
accelerate this growth. So that's why we say we fund projects versus we fund companies. So we don't fund operations of companies, we fund new and innovative projects. So your question around where they are in their scaling journey, I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
So there's a British Columbia-based company that we funded last year. They're called Crush Dynamics. They basically are a food tech company. They look at grape derivatives, and then they extract the polyphenols from there. So it's basically the leftover materials from wineries. They extract the polyphenols and agriculture waste, and then they create this food ingredient through this really targeted fermentation process. And this food ingredient is a replacement for sugar.
Mm.
So what it is it reduces the sugar content, it reduces the cost, and it improves the texture. And then they're working with someone like Purdy's chocolate to incorporate that as an ingredient, as a healthier alternative or in a
Mm.
cost-effective alternative. So some really great startups in this space that are creating tech that scales nutrition, but with a fraction to the environmental cost, while also improving kind of food functionality and shelf life.
So what I'm hearing is that the companies that you're supporting are innovative, but they're also producing nutritious, right, foods for the consumer, but at the same time are healthy to the environment, or maybe they're connected with conservation as well. When we talk about sustainability, for example, can you give us some more examples of that as well?
Yeah, for sure. So, food waste is one area that I talked about, right? And food waste innovation. And as I mentioned, it's a massively overlooked area in the food system. One of the companies that we funded that focuses on kind of sustainability around food innovation and upcycling is a Calgary local company, and we funded them, so they're Stephen backed. They're called Need Technologies.
Mhm.
And basically, what they do is they rescue, so it's a food rescue operation. They rescue food with a powerful software, and it basically connects those that have excess supply of food to those that are in high demand, like food banks and shelters. Another company that we funded is called Supply. They have a zero waste returnable packaging system. So, some really good opportunities coming out of there as well.
So, why is uh, Canada investing so much in the terms of food tech and ag tech? May seem like an obvious answer, but maybe not so much. I mean, what are the challenges, and sort of what are the solutions as well to those challenges? Like right now in Canada, or what you're seeing in terms of food production.
Well, Canada ranks number 10th globally in terms of the number of agri-food tech companies and 13th globally in terms of total investment. So on its own, it's picking up on a lot of elements there. We produce some amazing raw products within the prairies mostly, and then we've got some really interesting value-added capabilities around protein, precision fermentation, etc. We've actually quantified a few of the things, especially through the report, and we've highlighted that food tech itself contributes over $102 billion Canadian to Canada's economy, which is kind of more than 3 times primary agriculture. So
Hmm.
that's why there's a strong focus through our organization on food technology. It needs to support, it needs, I say this all the time, and is that the future of food in Canada is under construction.
Hmm.
What that means is that we've got so many companies that are new to the game. To quantify it, and I'm an economist by profession, so I love numbers. To quantify it, 88% of the companies that came to life in the food tech ecosystem in Canada came to life in the last 6 years.
Hmm.
So what that tells us is it's a new ecosystem. It's growing and it's maturing. And Amy, you asked where the gaps are. We do have gaps in investment. We know that the startups in the food tech ecosystem in Canada, they lack funding that's necessary to scale effectively. They receive government support, they receive support from not-for-profits, but private capital funding is lacking. When it comes to early stage funding, you know, it's similar when we've compared ourselves to UK and US. So when it comes to early stage funding, the food tech ecosystem is similar to UK and US. But when you start to scale beyond Series A, B, and C, the rounds are much smaller in Canada, and that
Hmm.
hinders the growth for companies.
Mhm. Interesting. Why is it lacking? So, I mean, clearly there's a need. What's your take on it?
Yeah, well, we're a relatively smaller economy than the US, right? So that's one of the areas. But the other is that this is a new sector. It's not as mature as it is in the US. So, you know, the third element is the public support, and we pride ourselves in providing that early stage public support. But as the companies start to scale, we kind of lack that private capital. And that reflects because there's limited maturity in the sector right now. Um, and to give you some numbers, only 40% of investment rounds in Canada are venture backed
Mm.
versus UK and US are about 60% in the food tech space.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, so still a long way to go, right? And still in the earlier stages of things. So, a little bit about yourself. You're an economist. You have a master's, right, in economics, right? So, I guess where were you headed before entering this sector, or was it always your plan to maybe enter food and agriculture?
It was not my plan, and I'm so glad that I entered the sector because it's got so much momentum and it's so exciting. So I'll give you a little bit of a background. I was born in Islamabad, Pakistan. I was raised in Toronto. I moved to Calgary in 2015, and growing up was a mix of everything, from figuring out what to do to enjoying the little things. Within my journey, I've worked in economic development my entire life. So this has been dear and near to my heart. I started at Calgary Economic Development as an economist. I've worked with the federal government at Prairies Economic Development Canada, mostly on tech and innovation. And all my life, I worked with policymakers, founders, investors, community leaders. And I was introduced to this space about 3 years ago, and I fell in love with it because it's so fast paced and there's so much momentum. And what's great about food technology is the integration of so many different sectors that come together: biotechnology, health, computer science, um, cell foods, all the nutritional elements as well. So there's so many pieces around different sectors that can fit into this area. Um, and I love working in it because it's not the same as the narrative for food technology is not the same as it used to be. In the past, it was like, your parents have to have a farm, or you had to get an education in agriculture to be able to do this. But now we're working with software engineers and hardware engineers and food scientists and robotic manufacturers and really everyone that's doing some really, really cutting edge work in this space.
Yeah, interesting. What is a day like, or maybe what a day in a life look like for you in your position? It sounds like there's such a wide variety, right, of members that you have. What might a day in a life look like for you when it comes to your job?
Very happening. I have a lot of
You travel a lot?
conversations.
Yeah.
I do. I have a lot of conversations with founders. I travel mostly within my region, so Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. So mostly it's conversations with founders and entrepreneurs that are doing some really interesting work in this space, helping make introductions, connecting them to the right folks that can help them scale, or helping guide their application process for funding as it comes through to us. Then I'm very well connected with the entire ecosystem, and the entire ecosystem in food would be everyone from government to academia to agri-food groups to prairie companies to service providers to incubators and accelerators. And that collaboration piece is really important because, again, I'm in the business of economic development, and my goal is to help advance this sector. So that's what I do on a regular basis. And then, yeah, we help spread the word and the message, and we help curate some of those words and messages as well. So a lot of data work that was tied to the report that we did, and now most of the
Hmm.
conversations are around sharing that information externally.
Yeah, what kind of companies do you look for when you look for members, or for investments? Talk a little bit about what your sequence or process is. What are some of the factors that you seek?
Yeah, good question. Um, so Amy, we look at three different categories of companies that could be a really good fit for Canadian Food Innovation Network, and the type of services we provide. So the first is they're tech innovators. So they could be, again, as I mentioned, a robotics company that's making a fully autonomous commercial kitchen, like Gastronomist Technologies. Or it could be a software company that's creating more traceability across the food chain, um, or incorporating blockchain. It could be a services company. So those are tech innovators. So those are basically folks that have dedicated their time and efforts and energy to curate something specifically for the food sector. The second category of companies is tech adopters. That would be larger scale companies, someone like McCain Foods or PepsiCo that are really embracing some of that technology. It could also be manufacturing companies. It could also be retailers. So anyone that would adopt the technology that tech innovators create. And then the third category of companies that we support are small to medium-sized businesses. So those could be consumer packaged good companies, someone that's making ice cream, hot sauce, etc., or those that are incorporating kind of novel foods into their mix.
What might be some of the opportunities? I'm feeling like there are companies in the U.S. perhaps in this growing space of ag tech, food tech, and clearly globally. What might be some of the collaboration and partnership opportunities with Canadian companies? It sounds like it's a growing space. It's exciting. Are there examples of that? Is there a need for that?
Um, there's a great need for that. I think that companies cannot work without collaboration because that's the key kind of element there. We've been talking for years about cross-sector collaboration and how it's critical, but also interprovincial collaboration across Canada and collaboration across the borders as well. It's needed to accelerate meaningful food innovation. On our end, what we do is we make introductions. So we are connected with the Trade Commissioner Service. We're connected with EIT Foods from Europe as well as from New Zealand. So we do a lot of introductions for companies, and I'll give you an example of what we're doing. So we have this mega event that happens in Calgary every year. It's called Calgary Stampede. During Calgary Stampede, we're partnering with the Trade Commissioner Service here in Canada to work on an event called Taste of Western Canada.
Hmm.
Basically, what it will be is a showcase of consumer packaged good companies that are in this space that are looking to export internationally. And so through this event, they'll be connected to international distributors and buyers. And we're curating some connections already. Canadian Food Innovation Network is a proud partner. We have a pavilion there. It's not outdoors, so it's more like a central, but I like
Yeah.
to call it a pavilion. So we've got a dedicated space with all our members there. And so we're starting to make some connections already, proactive connections. So when those distributors and buyers come, they know who to chat with and where they are in their growth trajectory.
I want to ask you also about this space, about women in this space. I mean, our show very much spotlights the contributions often of women innovators, right, in the area of food and farming. So, what are you seeing in Canada's space when it comes to women, either the number of women who lead or co lead these startups that you work with?
I love this space. There's so many
Are there
women
more women?
leaders.
Yeah, so many
The-
women. Uh-huh.
yeah, our CEO is a woman, Dana McCauley. She's got an amazing background in food. There's, this food technology is full of some really amazing women leaders of different organizations that are doing some really great work. I collaborate with them all the time, and they're everywhere from food scientists to venture starters to anyone that would lead an accelerator or an incubator. And they're exceptionally smart. They know how to scale new technology. They know how to support with funding and risks and opportunities, and there's a really exciting space. I see a lot of great women doing great work in this space.
That is very, very cool. Back to the tech part of course, there's always this question of AI, right? What's the role of AI now in the food tech or ag tech, food tech space that you're seeing in the space and among the startups that you're working with?
Um, AI is very prominent. We're seeing a lot of cool companies take on some cutting edge work. So whether it's doing analysis on cell foods, or it's identifying new trends, or it's looking into AI, machine learning, data analytics to identify kind of what the appropriate value chain would be. So I'll give you an example of a company. It's called Theory Mesh. It's based out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. We funded them for one of our funding programs. They utilize AI, ML, and blockchain to create traceability across the food value chain. So what we funded them for was specific to beef and dairy industry, but honestly, Amy, the applications could be in any food sector. And what they do is they create traceability all the way from the farm to the producer, to any of the certifications that are required through the process when it gets to manufacturing, to retail, to the consumer. And so as a consumer, let's say you buy a loaf of bread and you scan a QR code in the back, you can trace it back to exactly what farm it came from and its certification around gluten-free, for example.
Well, there's a lot of fascinating companies that you work with, and right, I'm hearing some examples and stories of them. So, in terms of your own, I mean, you entered the sector right about 3 years ago, right, as an economist, having worked with trade. So, what is your own relationship now with food, and how has sort of working in the space impacted your own, your own connections with food when you shop, for example, or cook?
It's the most exciting space I've ever worked in, and I think I'm going to stay in this sector for a very long time. The maturity that I've developed in my knowledge and understanding of food systems through this work has again really guided kind of the work that I do, and it's guided my shopping habits as well. It's funny when we go shopping now, my husband and I, we usually look at the packaging. We look at whether it's locally made. We love to buy some elements that are upcycled. So there's a few really good companies that are locally made that look at like they use used coffee grounds to make pancake mixes or upcycled flour. So we look into a lot of those elements and try to pick them up, but also we're a lot more respectful of the process it takes to get to nutritious, healthy, sustainable food. So those elements are really important as well.
Yeah, share a little bit more about that. What part of the processes of that, or perhaps that journey, maybe do you want to highlight, especially for consumers who usually are not part of that process? What parts are unique, or maybe you want to share a bit more?
Yeah, so hmm, I'm just thinking of an example that I can share with you. I shared the upcycling example. So there is a local company here called Ground Up Eco Ventures, and they use used coffee grounds and coffee and potato peels to make skincare. And so we tap into a lot of what they make as well. And then, we've tried a lot of different food items that are made from next generation ingredients. So as I mentioned earlier in our chat, Maya Farms, they make the protein powder, and they recently sent over some protein bars that they've got amazing packaging. So it looks like a space bar. And it's called Ascend. So it's got that name, it's got black packaging. It says it's good for Earth and for the cosmos. But also what's great is that when you're eating it, you recognize how much protein you're digesting. So we're a lot more conscious about those areas as well. Um, And then we've utilized some of those services. So a local company called Nutri Meals, we funded them through Canadian Food Innovation Network. What they do is they connect you to a nutritionist. The
Hmm.
nutritionist would assess what your dietary needs are based on your health concerns, based on any goals you have for your health, and then it would guide you towards a meal plan. And Nutri
Hmm.
Meals would then go ahead and make the food according to that meal plan. So what's great about that is, there's some really good ways for us to then be able to tap into those foods. So we've tried that as a meal delivery service as well, and so we incorporate a lot of these elements in our daily life now.
Oh, that's very cool. So it sounds like we may here in the U.S. be able to try some of these foods right down the road,
Yeah,
especially mention the
probably.
protein bar as well.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, and finally, I guess, what is your own crystal ball or forecast on the the food tech or the agricultural tech sector in Canada as we move forward? What I'm hearing is maybe it's still in the early stages, but where do you see it headed and why?
Um, what I'll say is as I mentioned, the future of food is being built in Canada right now. And Canada has everything it takes to lead. So we've got world-class natural resources, we've got a really deep research and development capability, and we've got really smart and incredibly diverse people. Um, so that's an area that's doing really well. But our global leadership also depends on more than great ideas. So it really does require us to scale, have bold innovations, invest in more sustainable technologies, also ensure that our innovation ecosystem is more inclusive and more collaborative. So that's what we're working on now at Canadian Food Innovation Network. Um, and then we also know that Canada can build one of the most resilient, future ready food systems in the world. Since 2018, as I mentioned, we've seen that exponential growth. So 88% of the agri-food companies in the country have came to life in the last 6 years. We know that we're rapidly emerging as a global leader across multiple innovation domains, especially protein.
Mm.
We also know that the momentum is paving way for more strong export pathways, and that's where our relationship across the two countries comes in. So, as we build new global partnerships, there's really great opportunity for us to define kind of what food leadership looks like in the 21st century.
It's really exciting. I really appreciate your sharing a little bit about your story and also some of the stories about the innovation that's coming out, right, from your networks as well. Look forward to maybe tasting some of that down the road. So, anyway, thank you so much, Hubba, for your time and sharing with us and your insights with us. I'm going to sign off until the next episode. Please check out Women Innovators in Food and Farming. Thank you very much.